Letters from a Friend at the End of the World. Chapter 17. Secrets, Secrets, and More Secrets. October 1st, 1000. Dear Jerkface, Twilight sparkled. I've been thinking a lot about what I said to you in my last letter, which I doubt you've received yet, and have decided that what I said was wrong. I don't hate you with every fiber of my being. I hate you with every cell of every molecule of every fiber of my being. If you were to print the word hate on every inch of every page of your thickest book, it would not equal 1/1000th of the amount of hate that I have for you. But that's besides the point. I realize something more important than that. I blamed you for everything. The Ursa, my carriage, my career, my life after what happened. But I now know that that's wrong. It's not your fault that you defeated the Ursa Minor and upstaged me. It's my fault for not crushing the pathetic excuse for a town when I had the chance. I had those idiots eating out of the soles of my hoof, but I threw it away because I was too kind to simply destroy you when you refused to challenge me. Make no mistake, though, the next time we meet I will not be so generous. You'll wish that you had not been so good-natured the first time around. I will defeat you. It is my destiny. It is likely that this is the last letter you'll receive from me. I'm going away now, on a quest you might say, and the next time you'll see me, I'll be more powerful than you could ever imagine. Until we meet again, Trixie Lula Moon. Twilight read the letter again, scrunching her face. She sighed softly, setting the letter aside and extinguishing the tiny spherical light source she had conjured up. She looked a little to her right and smiled as she saw the bundle of woolen blankets heave slowly up and down. Spike may be a precocious baby dragon, but he was still a baby dragon. She reached over and placed a hoof on where she guessed the head was, petting it softly. There was suddenly a loud snort that shattered the silence, and Twilight's eardrums, from the other side of the cramped room. She glanced over just in time to see a sleeping Rainbow Dash roll over and exhibit a delightedly more quiet, yet indiscernible She giggled quietly. It's probably time for me to get some sleep too, I guess. As Twilight was adjusting her pillow, she heard a quiet creak of the door opening and looked up to see Logger entering the room. He didn't notice her at first until Twilight said, "Logger? What are you doing up so late?" He froze and jingled something in his free hoof, then looked down.
I could ask you the same, ma'am.
She didn't really know how to respond to that, so Twilight just waited for him to say something. He grunted.
Well, fine, you caught me.
She raised an eyebrow. He backed out of the room and nodded his head back toward the bar area.
Come on, then.
Twilight's brow creased, then, after a moment, relaxed and she shrugged, following him to an empty booth. She sat down after he offered her a seat.
Let me just go get a light real quick,
he said. Oh, no need, Twilight replied. Her horn flashed briefly and the same ball of light appeared in front of them, slightly brighter this time. It illuminated Logger's dark brown fur and the creased wrinkles beneath his blue eyes. They almost looked like little pools of fresh water amidst all the mud. In the faint, vaguely purplish light, she could see a tiny smile crack his thick lips.
That's quite impressive,
he said, indicating the makeshift lantern. Twilight grinned. Oh, that's just some silly spell I made up a while ago so I could read the night and not wake Spike up.
You made that up by yourself?
Sure, I've made up lots of spells. He clicked his tongue.
Well, I'll be damned. Ain't that something?
The tiny light wasn't quite bright enough to show off Twilight's reddening face. Oh, it's nothing. All I did was isolate the light that's normally produced from the horn when casting spells. They call it the corona effect. And then I move it to wherever I want using the same telekinesis spell I used to create the initial light in the first place. It's actually very simple, just a matter of... Never mind. I'm probably boring you with all this silly magic theory stuff. Twilight cleared her throat and sat back down. Logger waved his hoof dismissively.
No, it's interesting to hear about magic. Don't get to see much of it, being an earth pony and all.
His eyes seemed to get just the tiniest bit sadder. Anyway, I doubt you came into the room to talk about magic theory, and I'm willing to bet that you didn't even plan on me being awake. So that begs the question, why were you in the room at all? Twilight said, perhaps a little more accusatory than she meant. For a moment, Logger seemed to be fumbling with something underneath the table. Then he produced a small leather bag tied by a twine drawstring. It hit the table with a metallic thud, and the contents seemed to jingle happily. He pushed it toward Twilight.
That's for you and your friends.
She picked it up hesitantly with her magic, and then looked past it at Logger. What is it?
Bits. Your logging fees, plus a little extra. What little I can spare.
I can't take this, she said, trying to hand it back to him. He refused, putting his hoof out to stop the floating satchel. But we're the customers. Why are you giving us money? His hoof reached up under his jaw and scratched his chin.
Look, I'm not the kind of guy to go around handing out money to strangers, but I got a feeling you're going to need it more than me.
Twilight shook her head. But why us?
A lot of folks pass through here every day. Most don't even stay for more than a few hours. The rest are gone by the end of the day. He shrugged. But that kid, Trixie, she was something different. Don't know what it was, but I have to admit, I got a soft spot for her.
In the dim light, Twilight could see his eyes staring off into space, not really focused on anything. Misty.
I just don't want to see her get hurt, he finally admitted, putting his hoof over Twilight's, he said. As far as I can tell, you three mean to find her and bring her back. Giving you a bit of money is the least I can do.
I'm sorry, I really can't accept this, Twilight said as politely as she could. I don't feel right taking your money.
It's your money, too. I charged you way too much anyway.
But why even charge us in the first place, then? He leaned back in his chair and let out a long, slow sigh, crossing his foreheads.
Look, I've got a reputation around here. Like I said, I ain't the kind of guy to go around giving money to strangers. If they saw me handing out free rooms with a bag of bits, I'd be out of business in a week.
He played with the stubble on his chin.
Hell, I didn't even want you to know I was giving you money. Of course, then it'd be just my luck to find you awake, he said, somewhat amused.
Twilight's eyes glazed over as she stared at the small money pouch. After a few seconds, she said, I don't know what to say.
Nothing, Logger said, leaning forward suddenly. I don't want you breathing this a word to any of your sleeping friends, you hear? Twilight nodded. Can't go around advertising my generosity, can I?
He chuckled warmly. Twilight smiled, taking the satchel and placing it somewhere safe. Thank you so much, Logger. Really, you're too kind.
Don't go telling anyone else that,
he laughed. He put his hooves on the table and scooted himself out of the booth.
I think it's time both you and I get some rest, he said, helping Twilight out of her seat. I've no doubt you've got quite the journey ahead of you.
After she had managed to evict herself from the cushiony seat, she glanced over her shoulder and blew out the little light ball, eclipsing them in total darkness. Oh, sorry.
It's all right. I know my way around this bar, light or no. I've been in this place 30 Ow!
There was a dull thud followed by the crash and a yelp of pain. Oh my gosh, Twilight cried. Are you okay? Wheezy laughter echoed drowly.
Yeah, I'm fine. Nothing bruised except my pride.
Hang on a second. Twilight's horn ignited with purple flame for a brief moment, then another one of her light orbs bounced off and hit the room with a vaguely purplish glow. In a heap on the ground, Logger lay face down. He wasn't wearing his usual bartender's apron, and Twilight saw his hind legs for, she realized, the first time. One was completely normal, a leg coated in a thick layer of dark brown fur with a flagon-shaped cutie mark overflowing with foam near his haunches. But the other, it was different. Something about the way it moved seemed unnatural, almost robotic. It twitched, startling Twilight. She jumped back. Sighing, Logger heaved himself up and looked Twilight in the eye.
Well, he said without a hint of laughter from before, I guess that's two things you ain't going to speak of again.
He patted his back left leg. It almost sounded hollow, and definitely not like a normal leg. Twilight's eyes widened. Augmentation, she said breathlessly.
He nodded. Busted my leg a few years back in an accident involving a chimera, and since I wouldn't have been able to work anymore without it, I had it fixed.
Twilight's jaw hung open slightly. She stared at the leg. As far as she could tell from here, it looked fairly normal, but it felt wrong. I've heard about augmentation before, but I've never seen it in real life, and certainly not so close.
Tonight's just the night for first, ain't it?
He smiled unhappily. I don't understand. How does nobody know about this?
Well, not nobody. Thunderclap, he's been my best friend for Celestia knows how long, so he knows, him and a few others, but I don't like the rest of the town to know my business. After a few years, you get pretty good at hiding it. No one knows about this, and I don't want them to.
Except for me.
Except for you.
She shuffled her hooves awkwardly, biting her lip. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to,
He waved her away with his hoof. Nah, don't worry about it. I ain't blaming you. Wasn't your fault.
Suddenly, he put a hoof on Twilight's shoulder and said,
Now I think that's enough secrets for one night, don't you think?
Still somewhat bewildered, Twilight simply nodded. After a moment, she regained her composure and added the nod. I think it's time I go back to bed. She turned around and walked toward their bedroom door. Logger watched her open the door before he turned toward his own bedroom. As Twilight was closing the door, she saw Logger across the room. his head held up and an almost imperceivable limp in his left back leg. She stopped, opened the door again, and said, "Thank you. I'm sorry about your—" She trailed off. He glanced sidelong at her and gave her a nod. She was about to close the door again, but instead added, "Good night." He turned and gave her a kindly smile. "Good night to you as well, ma'am." Twilight smiled back and pulled the door closed. But before it clicked, he said, "When you see her, tell her I said hello." She stopped, holding the door just barely cracked open. "Her?" she said, barely more than a whisper. Twilight was just about to ask who "her" was when she heard Logger's bedroom door click shut, followed by the dull thunk of the door lock sliding into place. She sighed, then closed her own door and lay down in her makeshift bed. "Her?" she repeated.